Senator Segal, welcome to Global Newsmakers. Thank you very much for joining me here today.
Delighted to be here.
Canada is obviously extremely engaged on matters to do with the Commonwealth. Why does the Commonwealth matter so much to a powerful G8 economy like Canada?
Well, it's precisely because of the Commonwealth's reach across so many different aspects of the global community. The fact that the 2.1 billion people represent every religion and culture and race and color in the universe. That we have the richest and the poorest of countries in the Commonwealth, the biggest and the smallest. That it's a unique network with a special history that allows Canada to be a partner, a committed and engaged partner with countries who share a common desire for economic development, for expanded trade, and for rule of law, democracy, and human rights. And those really are our core foreign policy goals as being pursued by the present government, but has also been pursued in different ways by prior administrations. So it's a unique network. At Port of Spain, heads of government said that that network needed to have greater focus, had to be more precise about what it's trying to achieve, have a greater impact, a larger footprint, and Canada is very much in support of the process that began in Port of Spain in 2009.
Canada has strongly supported the Eminent Persons Group report calling for vigorous renewal of the Commonwealth and urgent reform. But can the Commonwealth genuinely engage in this kind of reinvigoration when its own champions have said that it's in danger of fading into insignificance if it doesn't do so?
Insignificance comes because people are not prepared to step up and take on the kinds of responsibilities that have to be assessed. It was difficult for the Commonwealth and the previous Eminent Persons Group 40 years ago to confront South Africa, to support the frontline states. The previous Eminent Persons Group went to Robben Island to meet with Mandela before he was freed from prison. Sonny Rampal was our Secretary General at the time. And the Commonwealth took a very, very tough position without the support of Mrs. Thatcher, without the support of President Reagan, because it was the right thing to do. And those are the kinds of things which define the Commonwealth, when it makes a stand, takes a position that is substantive, not always pleasant, but necessary. And we have seen less of that in the last little while, and I think Canada is one of those countries, including other countries from Africa and Asia, who want to see more of that transpire, not because we're looking for trouble, but because we do have core values which do have to be defended now more than ever.
You've strongly argued that the Commonwealth voice has never mattered more than now on issues like human rights, democracy, the rule of law. But you've also said that Commonwealth values cannot be selectively applied. Some people argue that that is exactly the case. Is this not a situation of trying to square a circle?
No, I think it's making the distinction, if I may, between the Commonwealth's role. All our members are independent sovereign states. We do not legislate at Marlborough House for what happens in domestic political decisions in our member states, quite the contrary. But we have a series of positions we can advance and sustain and be advocates for, such as, for example, an end to forced marriages for young women throughout the Commonwealth, which takes place in too many countries, such as an end to discrimination based on sexual orientation, which denies literally millions of people the care they need should they be suffering from HIV/AIDS. The Commonwealth can take that position. Individual countries will sort out how they address that on their own, based on their own democratic systems. But the Commonwealth has to be clear and precise about what its values are, what we believe in and what we're trying to achieve. And that has to be a process that reflects not the culture of any one part of the Commonwealth, but the different cultural aspects which form the core premise and respect for diversity. That's what Mandela said, as you know, when he came, after he became president, to London. And he went to Marlborough House before he went to 10 Downing Street. And he came to thank the Commonwealth and the High Commissioners there and all who had worked, and the Secretary General, for making the world safe for diversity. We have never needed a world that understood diversity more clearly than it has to be understood now. And that's why it's important we do not let the Commonwealth fall into insignificance, that we do not let it take the easy way out and avoid the unpleasantness. It has to take a stand, and that's what the Eminent Persons Group report called for, and that's the process we are now trying to work through to get as many of those recommendations into implementation as possible.
We're also living in a changing world. China is having increasing influence on many Commonwealth countries. Is there a danger that the lure of economic progress will dilute the Commonwealth's stance on issues like human rights and democracy and rule of law?
There is not a country in the Commonwealth which is not experiencing some significant interest from China in terms of investment. Canada is experiencing substantial interest from China in terms of investment because of China's need for resources, which we have in great abundance. China has an economic development model which has nothing to do with democracy. There are some beginnings, some green shoots of local democracy in municipal elections in China, which is very, very hopeful. And they have to get there on their own in a way that is consequent with their own history and traditions and culture. But it's very important now that the Commonwealth not stand down on the defense of democracy and the democratic model, precisely because, as you and I sit here, perhaps for the first time in recent history, the most powerful economy in the world is not a democratic economy. It's not the United States, it's China. All the more reason for the absolute linchpins of the Commonwealth, countries like India, for example, and others which are also economic success stories, but are profoundly democratic, for all of us to stand firm in support of the mix between democracy and development. Long before the aid specialists made the narrative very, very popular that democracy and development go together, the Commonwealth was saying that 3 decades ago. Always saying that without development, people having an economic opportunity to better their lives, you can't sustain democracy. And without democracy, you can't really have development where there's accountability to the people in terms of how funds are being spent. So that's always been a Commonwealth bias, and it's important for us to strengthen it in this present round of recommendations going through the process.